Supposed biblical error. Do Matthew and Luke teach the earth is flat? Both Matthew and Luke record the temptations of Jesus, and both record the devil led Jesus up to a mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world from up there. Matthew says, again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. Luke says, and the devil took him up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. But since the earth is round, it would be impossible to see all the kingdoms of the earth. So did Matthew and Luke teach the earth is flat and erroneously think that if you stood on a high mountain, you could see them all? Well, this is very unlikely. First, even if the gospel writers thought the earth was flat, they would know that if you stood on a high mountain in Judea, you could not see every kingdom of the world. Places like Ethiopia, India, and the Parthian Empire were still out of sight, even for someone who thought the earth was flat. So it is unreasonable to assume anyone would think you could see the entire earth and all its kingdoms from a small mountain in Judea. Two other options are far more likely. The first is that Satan showed Jesus a spiritual vision and flashed before him all the kingdoms of the world. There is evidence of this in Luke, who says he showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. If they were all seen in a moment, then it is possible it was a vision of some sort. We are, after all, speaking of Jesus encountering a spiritual being. So if the event is true, Satan would have spiritual powers and be able to show Jesus all these things. A typical skeptic usually responds with, what was the point of going up on a mountain? If it was shown in a vision, this could have been done anywhere. Why take Jesus up a mountain if not to show him the view from up there? Well, this is to assume the mountain's purpose was for looking across the land. It may have been meant for something else. Throughout the Old Testament, we hear of people worshiping false gods on the high places. High places were associated with spiritual activity, especially with that of false gods, which Christians today would call the worship of demons. So the devil would have been taking Jesus up to his throne, or to his spiritual ground, and asked Jesus to kneel before him at his throne, after of course he showed Jesus what he can offer. Matthew and Luke would have liked this element of the event. It would have been a demonstration for their audiences that Jesus can beat the devil on his own ground, that of a high place. Another option is simply the obvious one, namely that Matthew and Luke were just speaking in hyperbole and simply saying the devil led Jesus up to a high place to show him a great stretch of land, which was meant to represent all the kingdoms of the world. Just like today if a hiker climbs to the top of a mountain and proclaims he can see everything from up there. We all realize he doesn't mean everything, just that he can see far more than if he was at a lower altitude. Plus, this type of language is seen throughout the Gospels. Matthew says the fame of Jesus spread through all of Syria, and they brought all the sick out to him. He is probably just using hyperbole to mean Jesus was well known by many in Syria, and they brought a lot of sick people out to him. He later says all the city came out to see Jesus. He probably just means a large crowd from the city, and not every single man, woman, and child. Matthew does this many times, and Luke does it as well. So it is probable that is all that is happening during the temptations of Jesus. In their words, do not imply a flat earth, or that they could literally see every kingdom. Just a typical use of hyperbole. Thus, this supposed error can be resolved.